You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy M., where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy M.
Episode 58, Believable Hope with Joy Sutton. On today's show, I chat with Joy Sutton, the Director of Corporate Communications at American Addiction Centers, which is a leading provider of both residential and outpatient addiction treatment services. I'm thrilled to be able to use my Brave Girl platform to shed light on this critical topic and to provide vital resources and information to you through my conversation with Joy. On the episode, Joy tells the story of her boss, addiction treatment trailblazer Michael Cartwright, who co-founded American Addiction Centers, and she shares her best advice on how to get help for you or a loved one. We talk about the detox process and why it's best to do it with assistance. We also talk about residential treatment programs and the path to long-term recovery and sobriety. One of the resources we discuss is rehabs.com, a national directory and library of resources to help you find out what help is available. I encourage you to visit American Addiction Center's website as well. It's chock full of information, not just about their facilities and services, but it includes research and other resources as you do your research on where to find help. Joy and I also talk about Michael's best-selling book, Believable Hope, where he shares his personal struggles, his recovery process, and the 5-pronged approach that has caused dramatic transformation with his clientele, ranging from those living on the streets to celebrities and everyone in between. We talk about the stigma of mental health issues and the clinical of the information that's now available around brain diseases. On a personal note, Joy has spent more than 15 years as a media expert and journalist. Some of her career highlights have included covering the impeachment hearings of President Bill Clinton and serving as the anchor and health reporter for CBS affiliate WDBJ for more than a decade. She still enjoys entertaining a crowd, whether as a motivational speaker or MC, and her news voice has come in quite handy for commercials and other voiceover work. You'll love her answer to my finale question and understand why today she brings hope to people through her work as a communicator. Collectively, I believe that we can bring hope and joy to the world. So let's go and listen to what Joy has to say about Believable Hope. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Tonight, I have Joy Sutton, who is the Director of Corporate Communications for the American Addiction Centers, headquartered in Brentwood, Tennessee, with us. And American Addiction Centers has recovery treatment centers in 12 different states across the U.S. And it's led by Michael Cartwright, who is a leading thought leader in the field of behavioral health and addiction. And he's written a book called Believable Hope, and he's got 5 essential elements that he believes are important. And so I just want to welcome Joy to the show. I'm so excited. Their public relations firm reached out to me to pitch them to me to put on the Brave Girls podcast, and I'm just so thrilled to have Joy on the mic with me tonight.
Well, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes.
And connect with your amazing audience, which you told me it's all over the country and the world. 40 countries. That's so impressive. So I commend you for bringing attention to this topic and for having me on the show today.
Yeah. You know, there really has always been a stigma, I think, around mental health issues, and with the country and the crisis that it's in right now with the opioid situation and opioids being laced with fentanyl and fentanyl. We've always had, recovery centers across the U.S. dealing with alcohol addiction. But this is sort of like a new wave that is really cutting across all demographics, all walks of life. Doesn't matter what your income is, doesn't matter where you live. And so give us a little background on sort of just American Addiction Centers as an organization and what your kind of mission is out there and what you're trying to change in kind of the recovery and treatment world that maybe has kind of been in the shadows compared to other healthcare.
Yeah, what I think the most important thing that we do every day is give people hope. When you read the headlines and you see that people are dying from this disease and you see so many families affected by this, a lot of people feel like they're in a hopeless situation or there is no hope to get out of this situation. And that's what I love about American Addiction Centers. And even when you talked about Michael Cartwright's book, Believable Hope, because there is hope out there. This is a terrible and chronic disease, but it is treatable. And I think that's the message we want to get out there, is that there's hope. This is a treatable disease. We like to think about it like diabetes. If someone has diabetes, it's something they may have to live with for the rest of their lives, but it's something that they can manage. And this disease that we call addiction is manageable, and there's hope out there. And what I love about working at American Addiction Centers, or even just touching people, is introducing them to the treatment options that are out there. One of the things that we're really passionate about is revolutionizing the treatment of addiction, because like you mentioned, as in other areas of medicine, there's been a lot of research about what works or a lot of money put behind it. But until recently, we really didn't see that with addiction. And so that's one of the things that we're passionate about, is figuring out what's the best way to treat this disease. How can we get more people into long-term recovery? How can things like pharmacogenetics, where we're looking at how someone's body reacts to different medications and what their risk factors are for addiction, how can we look at the science of this as well and make this a priority in America in terms of the treatment, but also, make people realize that there are people such as American Addiction Centers who are passionate about this every day. And we're fighting to save families. We're fighting to save lives. We're fighting to save marriages. That is what we believe. And there is believable hope, as Michael said in his book.
That's great. That's great. And then I guess also, sometimes there may be elements of mental health issues commingled with the addiction issues, sometimes not. But how do you kind of approach that? Is that sort of like when somebody says, I'm ready for help, or they show up on your doorstep? Is there like some kind of like, I don't know, like an initial intake where you do that mind, body, spirit analysis to just kind of see what's going on?
Yes, there is an intake process that we do with everyone. And we also look at their medical conditions, as you mentioned, in addition to mental health conditions. Because what we have found is that a good percentage of the people who are struggling with an addiction also have what we call a co-occurring mental health disorder. And so we believe, and it's one of the things that Michael was very passionate about early in his career, is that we need to treat the whole person. We can't just deal with the addiction without looking at, are there other contributing factors that are leading or that are causing this to be an exasperated problem. And so we believe in treating not only like the mental health condition, whether that's depression or bipolarism or something like that, but treating that in addition to dealing with the substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So walk me through kind of what somebody, first of all, just having dealt with this with family members and friends, the person has to want to get help, right?
Yeah, I think there has to be this underlying hope that they can get better, or that they want to change, or that mindset. But what's interesting, we did an interview with someone recently, and she said, I didn't really want to go. I went for my family. I just knew that this is what I had to do. But in that process of her just wanting to go because her family wanted her to, she got better. And now she's celebrating 4 years in recovery. So I think we see people all, the gamut. Of course, you need that initial desire to want to get better, to believe that there's something better for your life. But I've also seen people who said, somebody else wanted me to go, or they pushed me to go, and they got there. And being in a recovery environment where you have other people alongside you who are saying, you can do this, when you have people rallying around you, sometimes gives people that belief and that hope and that perseverance that they didn't initially have when they came to treatment. So it's interesting to hear those stories. And I believe everybody's story is different. Everybody's story is going to be unique for them. And so my biggest thing is when I talk to people is, if you even have a desire, or even if you're starting it because your family wants you to go, just get there. get there. And if you can get there, then the resources and the people and the other people in recovery who are there with you are going to rally around you to help you get to the point that you're ready. And for some people, as we know with this disease, it may take several times in treatment.
Yes.
You'll see people relapse and you go, why are they relapsing? But we know that's part of this, that can be part of this disease. But every time they go, they're in this environment and around a community that is rallying and believing for them that things can get better. And, we have treatments out there, we have group therapy, we have so many things we have in place that when someone goes to treatment, to give them the best possible chance at a life of recovery. We give them coping skills. We deal with, like you said, trauma or other co-occurring mental health disorders that they may have had. We look at that whole picture and give them the tools so that when they walk out of our doors, that they are able to encounter the world again in a new way and to see their addiction in a new way and find a way to live every day, moment by moment, in recovery. Because it is a new journey. It's a new way of living. It's not like you go to treatment and you're cured. That's not how it works. But it's a journey. It's something you live with every day, but it's manageable, and you can go on to live a fulfilling and great life. If you look at Mark Cartwright, who's our CEO, he has more than 25 years in recovery. He's gone on to do great things. As a young teenager, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and, that he had addiction and all these other things. If you look at the things that he went through, but he overcame and he didn't let that stop him. And he went on to not only go to college and do so many great things in his life, but now find a way to give back and to help so many other people right now who feel like all hope is gone.
Right. Yeah. And I guess also when I think about our veterans that may have been over in Iraq or Afghanistan, and when they come back and they might have PTSD, that makes them vulnerable for going down kind of the slippery slope of some kind of an addiction as well. And so just, making sure that we have a net for them or a place for them to know that it's okay that they come and they get treatment, right? After they've,
Absolutely.
been through some kind of trauma.
Yeah, because, sometimes, especially with our nation's heroes, it's hard to admit when you're viewed as a hero that you need help. And so that's been really, really difficult for a lot of people. And one of the things we started is a program called Salute to Recovery. And it really is for those veterans who find that they are struggling. Maybe it was a trauma that, happened when they were out there fighting a battle, or they witnessed some things that many of us would think of as unimaginable. They experienced those things.
Right.
Well, we offer them kind of a lifeline to get their lives back and to begin to talk about it and to have a place where they're around other veterans and first responders through our Salute to Recovery program. And so they have an opportunity to talk about that and to let down those walls. Because a lot of times we find that there are those walls when people view you as a certain way. It's hard to let down and say, I need help. And so a lot of times they turn to a drug or alcohol as a coping mechanism, something just to help them get through. And that's where we find them. And one of the reasons we've been really passionate about having a program at our Desert Hope facility specific for veterans to help them to deal with the trauma and the other things that they have experienced and find a way to manage that and live a normal and healthy life that they deserve.
Right. Now, where is Desert Hope? Where is that located?
That's in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Okay.
At our Las Vegas facility.
And then through the process that when someone is in, is it a 30-day commitment that they make when they come to you?
Yeah, typically residential treatment. We recommend people first start through a detox process.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, that is one of the biggest things that I think is a misconception. Some people think they can detox on their own, and it really, really depends on the drug. For example, people don't realize that detoxing from alcohol is one of the most deadly substances. You can actually die detoxing from alcohol, from having seizures and all kind of stuff. So the first process that we take people through is a detox process, where we start to work the drug out of their system. And then they're typically in residential treatment where they spend around 30 days in residential treatment. where they're learning like those things. They're going to group therapy. They're getting those coping skills, all of those things they need to be able to face the world again. And then from there, a lot of times they'll go into a recovery residence where they're surrounded still in a safe environment where you're around other people who are living the same lifestyle that you're living to continue to build your strength and recovery. So there are kind of phases to this that people can go to. And like I said, we really believe it's personalized to the individual based on where you are, your circumstances, and what you're battling. But I would say typically we see people definitely go through the detox process. They're in residential, then they may step down to what we call partial hospitalization, all the way up to like a recovery residence where they're living in a community surrounded by other people who are also in recovery and continuing to help them build their strength in their recovery before they head back out in the everyday world.
So in Maryland, there's a shortage of beds in terms of, you may be willing, able, want to go into treatment, but there's not enough beds. Is that a nationwide problem? And how do we get more beds if, as more people become touched by this? It's sort of like the chicken and the egg, right? Like it costs money to build the facilities and have the beds. But yet, and then sometimes people aren't ready, but then all of a sudden they become ready. And in that 24-hour period, you can't find some place for them to go. So talk a little bit about your knowledge around that.
Well, what I would tell people is sometimes you may have to leave your home state or you may have to go someplace else. Don't limit yourself. If you knew, the way I like to think about it, if you knew you were struggling with cancer, or if you knew that you had a disease that had the potential to be deadly, you would go anywhere, do anything that you had to do to get the help that you needed. And so I would encourage people, don't limit yourself. Look at the resources, even if you have to go outside your everyday community, because this is a disease that we know if you don't treat it, it doesn't get better. It's not something that's just going to go away. It's going to get progressively worse. So don't be afraid to go outside of your four walls or where you're used to of your home community to look for resources other places. We have a website called rehabs.com, which lists hundreds, actually thousands of treatment centers all over the country and just different things that they provide and the resources available that they can go on that website and search for one that may be maybe a couple 100 miles for them or just what they specialize in and see the options that are available to them. But I would say I would really encourage them to think about if you had cancer and you knew your life was on the line, would you not do everything possible to save your life? Well, that's what we're dealing with this disease of addiction. We have people, as we were talking about earlier, that are dying. People are dying every day. We have kids that are dying, people that are overdosing. And I just would encourage people that think about it like this. We have to do everything that we possibly can if we have a loved one or if it's ourselves or somebody that we know that's struggling to get them help. And I think you should never give up. If it was me, I don't care what it was, whatever I needed to get better, to live the life that I wanted to live or the life that I felt I should live, I would do that. So that would be my advice to, your listeners out there. It's to don't give up, fight for it. If you have to go to a different state, do that. If you have to find another resource, whatever you have to do, I would say try to do that as you would as if it was cancer.
Now, I think that's fabulous advice. I think sometimes people do limit themselves because they don't want to travel or that then becomes an excuse, right? But you're absolutely right. If you had some kind of deadly disease, you would find your way to Hopkins or to the Mayo Clinic or to, Anderson, you would go to one of these major medical centers for that. And so I absolutely agree with you.
And you know what I think happens there that I was going to just add there?
Yeah.
I think because for so long we viewed addiction as a moral failing instead of a brain disease. You know what I mean? So if you're thinking of it as this is something morally wrong with me, it's hard to justify, doing everything because you think, well, it's something wrong with me. I'm a bad person. But that could be the furthest from the truth. You're not a bad person. You're struggling with a disease, a brain disease. Something in your brain is not functioning at its best, which is leading you to have addiction. It's a disease. And if we begin to look at it like that, we'll begin to put the energy and the resources and everything we need to do to fight this. But until we change that, if you think about that stigma, that this is a moral failing, that somehow there's something wrong with you, you're not good enough, or you're not strong enough, or somehow you're a bad person, how could you get into these drugs? Until we change that conversation, people will begin to feel guilty even about investing it, about spending the time and energy to get the help they need, because they feel, I'm not worthy, I'm a bad person, I should be able to get over this. But if I tell you, you have a disease, like somebody who has heart disease, you have a brain disease of addiction, and you need help just like the person who might need to have a cath procedure, or who might need to have open heart surgery, or who might need to have that in order to survive, you need help in that same way. And I think if we can begin to destigmatize the way we look at it, people will begin to get help even more. I think another reason why people don't get help is because they do feel like they'll be shunned. They feel like people will look at them differently. They worry if they'll lose their job, or maybe their church will think something's wrong with them, or they're not spiritual enough, or all of these other things that are out there. But I think if we can change that conversation, that's a big thing. And when you mentioned not having enough beds, I think that's unfortunate, but it shows that so many people are struggling with this disease. But when I look every day at the number of treatment centers across the country, we have thousands and new treatment centers coming all the time to treat this disease. So there are rooms available. You might just have to come outside of your community and where you're used to, or your comfort zone, to find something. And like you said, if you had cancer, you'd say, hey, I'm going to Johns Hopkins, or I'm going to the Mayo Clinic. Whatever needs to happen. If you couldn't get into a doctor in your local community, you would go wherever you had to go, if you could do that, to get the resources and the help that you needed.
Right. No, this is all really, really good information. And I think, part of the reason why I wanted to have you guys on was to just have this conversation and to provide the education, because I think it is an education too, right? And I think that we need to have those conversations. And it's happening all across America in droves, more than we've ever seen it in our lifetime. And I feel like we're all part of the solution at the same time, right? And so, and I do think that people like Michael, who can then in their sobriety become that beacon of light, and to give back and to hold space for the people that are in recovery. And like you said, many times people, they fall back, right, through whatever reason. And so sometimes they have to go through treatment several times. I've had family members multiple times have to, be willing, and then they beat themselves up because they weren't able to stay in recovery, so that's also something that they fight, if they relapse.
It's so unfortunate. Yeah, because when you think about it like a disease, even someone who might have diabetes, if we're using that analogy again, how many times has someone who's diabetic had a slice of cake again, or went off the plan that the doctor said for them, even knowing that they're at risk for neuropathy or blindness or heart disease or all the other things that come along with diabetes? It's hard. I think just sticking to a diet is hard. So if you can imagine what people are going through, I think we need to have more sympathy for people in this country who are struggling with this. And, I think in the beginning, had my own judgments or thoughts about addiction before I worked in this space. And I thought, some of the things that people may be thinking who are listening, like, okay, well, why can't they just stop drinking? Or why, this is a moral issue. But until I started meeting people who are struggling with it and seeing people who are in recovery, they're some of the best people you will ever want to meet. And it really changed my heart. And it made me think, wow, think of all the greatness that we're missing out on because these people are struggling with this disease. Somebody who is maybe meant to give in an area of art or theater or psychology or whatever, who's battling a disease. And because they're battling this, and at this moment maybe losing, we're missing out on their gift to the world. They were meant to be here for a purpose and to bring a gift. And because they're dealing with this, we're missing out. And I've met so many amazing people in recovery, because one of the things at American Addiction Centers you'll find is a good percentage of the people who work there are in recovery. So I come encounter with people every day who are in recovery and hearing those stories. And it's hard to believe. Sometimes I listen and I'm like, oh my God, you were homeless. You were shooting up heroin. You were doing all these things. And I see their lives now and I'm like, it's amazing. It's amazing what recovery can do and that people can get their life back. And I think while we see all the negative stuff on the news, I think we need to see more positive stories as well of the people who do come out of this, of the families who are reunited, of the people who go on to live fulfilling lives, that there is hope out there. And I think that's a big thing. I remember when I first started working at the treatment center, I met a woman, and she started working there after divorcing her husband, who had been an alcoholic for, I want to say, over 30 years. And she divorced him, and he ended up getting in treatment, actually at one of our treatment facilities while he was there, while she was working there. And fast forward, they're getting back together and possibly remarrying. And the one thing she said to me that was so powerful, she'd been married to this man for several years, 30 years. She said, it's like I'm dating a new person. It's like learning a new person over again. And it was amazing to me, while the core of the person are the same, how much this disease can impact and change someone. And now she's reuniting with her high school love. And when I hear stories like that, I'm like, wow, how could someone you've known for 30 years go through treatment, come back and be an entirely kind of different, like their demeanor. She had to find out he didn't even know what he liked. Like, because the disease takes over so much. Like she said, he couldn't even sit down and watch a movie before. And now they're watching movies together or go to the park. So it's amazing just how this disease can impact and destroy someone's life. But once you can get someone to the point of recovery, how it can rebuild and how they can actually, regain their life again. And that's what keeps me excited every day about what I do. I mean, it's easy to get discouraged when you hear another person overdose, because we hear it all the time. But when I see this people who are walking testimonies around me, when I walk through our centers and I see people who've gotten better, or I hear someone who's celebrating sobriety, it gives me hope that things are possible and that people do recover from this disease.
Oh, that's just
recover.
That's just beautiful. That's just beautiful. So, Joy, my finale question is always, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today? And you've had a illustrious career in the media, and, your story is also amazing. And now you're doing this work at the American Addiction Centers, using your gifts as a communicator and really getting the word out, being the brand ambassador, being the face of the organization out across the U.S. So, what would you say that is for you?
Oh, I've had so many moments, but if I had to pick one, it was when I left my television career. I was at a point in my career where I had been there doing television. I was a health reporter and anchor for 10 years. And I was at this place where I was kind of stuck. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I had an opportunity to get into public relations, healthcare public relations, actually working at HCA. And in that moment, they came to me and it offered me a position. And I remember feeling like I was giving up my dream. Like I had spent my whole life thinking I was going to be Oprah and thinking I was going to do I'm like, this is my career path. And I remember going into my boss at my television station and saying, I'm leaving. And she goes, you can't leave. You are giving up your career. You'll never be on television again. You're giving up the opportunity. And I turned down the job to work in public relations 3 times, the same job. And I remember I just took a moment and I took a whole day and I really prayed about it. And I was like, what is it I'm supposed to do? And what I realized is that staying in TV was about fear. It was the fear that if I left what I knew, I wouldn't be the same person, or wouldn't be able to contribute it to the world in the way that I imagined, or that I would never fulfill the dreams that I felt that were in my heart. But I knew if I took this new opportunity, it was about faith. It was about getting out in an area that I had never done before, a new career, a new opportunity, something totally different. And I made the decision to walk. And so that day, I remember the day I left the station, my boss came up to me at the TV station and she said, you can still come back at any point. If you change your mind, you can still come back. And I said, no, I want to move in faith and not be held back by fear. And that faith is what got me to working at HCA for 6 years in Southwest Virginia, and then going on to find another passionate opportunity with American Addiction Centers, where the thing that I was always most passionate about, and the reason why I always wanted to, be like Oprah, it's because I wanted to have that kind of impact. I loved how she could impact people by the words that she said. And so I look at what I do every day, even though I made that brave decision to leave something that was comfortable, to leave something that people said I was crazy to leave television, to give that up, to move in an area of faith and say, I don't know what the future holds, but I know I can do it. And I know that the right doors will open. And now every day I get to bring hope to people by sharing stories and introducing people to information about a disease that's devastating our country. So tell the women and your listeners, who I'm sure there's some men on there too, and that's called Brave Woman, is that sometimes you have to ask yourself, when you're in a position, am I operating in fear or am I operating in faith? And I always find if you're making a decision based on fear, it's not the right decision. Operate in faith and the doors will open that are meant to open in your life. And that, I would say, was been one of my bravest moments. That was really, really difficult.
Yeah. I mean, you could have just stayed there forever. But you know what? I'm so glad you made the decision, because you are a wealth of knowledge, and everything that you shared just in this brief conversation it's going to touch lives. It's going to mean something to somebody somewhere, that either they have a brain disease, they have a family member, they're at the end of their rope, they don't know where to call, they don't know where to go. So you said rehabs.com would be one website, and then American Addiction Centers, you can just Google that, right?
Yeah, or go to americanaddictioncenters.org. And it goes, And the good thing about our website is we have a wealth of information about the disease. So say you just want to go on there and learn, what is addiction? How do you treat it?
Right.
What are the options available? So in addition to introducing people to treatment centers that are near them, it also introduces them to understanding this disease and the science behind this disease. So I would encourage anyone who's out there who just is wondering, maybe, am I struggling? Is my loved one someone who needs help? What is addiction? To go to the website to learn and do their research and to find out more about this disease and the help that is available. And lastly, of course, I would say is, as you mentioned, I hope that someone's listening out here today will not give up on a loved one. They will not give up on themselves, that they will know that this is treatable and that there is believable hope, as Michael said. You have to believe it, but there is hope out there for the people who feel like they're in a hopeless situation and things will never get better. I see them every day in the people that I work with who have been in situations that many of us think, how did they survive that? But they survived, they got help, and now they're going on to help others.
Right. And they're probably living a life beyond their wildest dreams. And as you said, it's not a moral failing. And I think for so long, I feel like our society has really made people feel that way. And I love that you are teaching people the coping skills. And then sort of, helping them through the detox process, helping them through the 30-day residential, and then going into sort of a recovery residence to still provide them that sense of community as they kind of transition through and back out into society, understanding how they can live a life in recovery and they can contribute and they can continue to have hope. But I love that you guys are revolutionizing the whole conversation, really, and really providing that hope for folks. And I'm really excited when this episode comes out to really show the impact to folks. And I'll make sure I put links in all in the show notes to all of these different resources. On your website, it said 888-985-1417 as a toll-free number that people could call if they want to just start the conversation. And while you're not in every state across the U.S., you are in many. And, I'm sure you can serve as a resource to folks, that are ready or have a family member that's ready.
Absolutely. And, I just want to commend you for allowing us a platform to help people. And I think that is amazing that you're using your voice and your, Brave Girls podcast, which I love it, to help people to know that there's resources and there's hope and there's help. And it takes bravery to get help. You got to be brave sometimes. And so I think that kind of ties into what we're talking about today, is just being brave and taking that first step to get help. So thank you for what you're doing. and for giving, a platform. Even if they don't get help with us, I just want them to get help in general. Go someplace, find the
Exactly.
help you need, and get on that road to recovery, because it is possible.
Yeah, yeah. And at this time in our American history, it's a crisis. I mean, we are in crisis. There's no doubt, and it's not somebody else's problem. It's our collective problem to work together to really help everyone rise and to get that help and to have those conversations and to really educate themselves on that long-term recovery is possible, but we've got to shift it to the conversation is it is a brain disease and it is treatable, and sometimes people do have these co-occurring conditions, and while in the past there may be stigma around bipolar, schizophrenic, like whatever the mental health issue is, that's underlying or contributing to or it happening at the same time, and I love that you guys have the salute to recovery for the first responders and the veterans, and letting them know that there's a way through this and that they don't have to suffer alone.
hmm They don't have to suffer alone. There's so many people. You'd be surprised if we just looked at our community and turned to the right and turned to the left. There are people we don't think about. There are people who are sitting, at the baseball game next to you. There may be people in your church or your synagogue or wherever you are. There are people we encounter every day and we have no idea. I think most of us in our mindset, we're picturing it's the person who's homeless on the street or something like that. That's a portion of it, but there's so many more people that are mothers, soccer moms, people out there living every day that many of us have no idea what they're going through. We have
Right.
no idea because we in our mind are thinking it's not our problem, it's not our community, it's not our people, but it is our communities. It is our people. It is our friends. It is our family. It's people that are struggling that we may not even realize, that we need to be more aware and let them know that there is hope and help out there, and looking to be a resource or looking to give someone a hand. Or if you see someone struggling, just going out and reaching, say, hey, are you struggling? Do you need help? Let me help you. We all
Yes.
have to be aware and stop thinking it's someone else's problem, because there's so many people who are not homeless, who are not what you think of as somebody struggling with this disease, who are. And it's so
Yes.
unfair that we have labeled it that way.
Yes.
It means that so many people that need help feel like they can't come forward, feel like they
Right.
can't admit that they have a problem. And that is the most unfortunate part about it. And I think if anything, in addition to the hope that's out there, that if we get the message out to the women who are out there, is that they're not alone. Like you said, they may be a mom right now who has a newborn child who maybe
Mhm.
got addicted to prescription painkillers, or they may be a mom who's watching her young son who's now dabbling in alcohol and starting to have a problem and shouldn't be doing that and is coming home late. They're the people who are in our community. And so
Yes.
I would just encourage everyone who's out there just to love each other, be aware, pay attention, and remember this is not just their problem, it's our problem, and
Yes.
we should be there for them.
Yes. Well, thank you, Joy. You are a joy. And I'm so glad that we were able to spend this time together. And I think that through this episode, we're giving people hope.
Absolutely. I always thought my mom named me Joy for a reason.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
because I want to bring joy to the world. And I'm blessed to be able to do that through American Addiction Centers as the platform at this time to be able to bring that hope and that joy to people. And so I hope that someone listening today, it's brought them hope and some level of understanding that this is a disease and that there is help
Yes.
out there.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.